Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to Module 2, Unit 3, Record Search Part 2. Today we're going to look at a female ancestor to see about different ways that we can search them. So, first we have Sarah Jane Lewis at the top, and Lewis is actually her married name. So you can see here where it says spouse, Wilford Isaac Lewis. And so if that is her married name, it's going to go ahead and put in those fields on the left-hand side. And so as we search through these records, we just have to keep in mind that we're probably only going to see her married name. But if we change her last name on the left and put her maiden name, and you can either hit enter with on your keyboard, or you can scroll down and hit update. Enter is much faster, so I usually use that. And then those fields will change. You see, I don't see all the Lewis anymore. I see Romerol more now. And so it's important for females, if you know the maiden name and married name, that you try it with both names. And so we're going to scroll down and see the other records of her as a mother, which is interesting because they did put the maiden name on here on these birth records, so that's good. That doesn't always happen. And you can scroll down to find any other records, marriage records and such. Now if we scroll to the top, when I'm doing a search, I like to make all kinds of changes here just to make sure I've grabbed every record available on that ancestor. So maybe I will take off the middle name entirely, or just leave the middle initial. I might also take off the birthplace, the marriage place. I might take off that marriage entirely. If I do that, I'm just going to hover over it and click. Same for death, because this is going to be very specific. We're going to go ahead and take those off, and then we're going to update. So each time you do that, do you see how you have different information popping up here? We're going to keep doing that and find additional information on this person. Now, as I'm doing that, I would research each of these documents and attach them as I taught you in the previous lesson. A lot of these are already attached to my ancestors, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just trying to get you familiar with refining your search here on the left-hand side. Again, birth range, always put a couple years range in there because of census and errors in birth dates and stuff, so keep your range. Usually I just do about 3-year range on the birth date. If you do know the spouse's name, you can add that here too. You can use just their first name, you can use their last name. The idea is just to keep trying different searches as you are working on your family tree to make sure that you've pulled every record possible, because each record has different information. There may be extra siblings, somebody staying in that house on a census, or birth, death, obituaries. They might be mentioned with different names. You can even flip-flop this and use their first name and see if maybe somebody made an error and put those names, interchange them. You could try it that way as well. So we just really, when we're searching records, we want to think outside the box as much as possible. So every time I'm changing fields, you're seeing that the information on the right is changing too. So that is why it's important to refine your search in many different ways. Here's FindAGrave. We'll do a little lesson on FindAGrave. It's a great resource. Just keep in mind when you're looking at women to look at their maiden name as well as their married name. Now, let's go back to Sarah's personal identification page, and let's look at her siblings down below under the family members. And let's click on one of her brothers. Let's try John. Now we're picking a male because there are some World War drafts that are different, of course, and back in this time it was just the men. So let's take a look at one of those records. Okay, so as you can see here, when we clicked on John Thomas, there are a few different records that we're looking at. We're going to go ahead and look at this obituary where he is mentioned. Now this isn't him, but it's a family member where he is mentioned within this obituary. So there is a lot of helpful information in obituaries. It'll tell a little bit about their life, family members, those that passed on before them. And so there's just a wealth of information in obituaries, and they've just added a whole bunch of obituaries to FamilySearch, so that's exciting. At the top, it would normally have that blue button if we needed to attach the record, but it's already been attached. As you can tell, it says it's been attached to that record. So we're good there. Let's close out that window and search again. And let's look for a registration card, a World War draft. This is a World War II. In the center, it's going to have some important information that's actually not indexed. So it has our name, and if we use those plus and minus arrows on the left-hand side, we can zoom in and look at this a little bit better. In the middle, it's going to tell us who is the person that will always know this person's address. And so this is going to be a parent, a spouse, so somebody close to the family. And so right here, as we look back at our family tree and scroll down on family members, I'm going to see if I can figure out who Inez is. And Inez is listed as, I guess, a second wife. He was married again later on, and that's who's listed on that record. Her name was not on the original index record that we saw on the previous page, so it's important that you actually look at these images. Now, another interesting thing on these cards, besides the name and the closest living relative, is that they signed these cards with their own signature, so it's kind of fun to see what their writing looked like. Let's take a look at another ancestor. So this is on my Italian side. If I click on Joseph W. Basso, click on sources, we have a lot of records here. I want to show you what some of these records look like, what kind of information are on them. So if you have some already attached to an ancestor, you can go under here and click on any of these links, and you can review the attachments, you can detach the attachment, take it off of that person's record, you can make some edits, you can tag it under those names, under birth, whatnot, tag the information that you find. You can look at the original document and then the index part on the bottom. Now remember, the index part is done by human eyes, and sometimes the handwriting is not very clear, and so they have to do the best job at trying to decipher the information. So if there's ever a question in the documents, just look at the original picture. So we're going to click on that image. Okay, here's the death record. We're going to go ahead and use our wheel on our mouse to scroll in, or you can use the side plus and minus. And if you click and drag, you can just move that document anywhere you want. So it tells us the county, what he did as occupation, his mother's maiden name, which is my great-grandmother, and his father's name on here. Now my great-grandmother's name is actually Giacinta, but they just put Cinta on here, Ciotti. So just remember, even on death certificates, all the information is not going to be exactly correct. She probably went by Cinta most of her life when she came to America from Italy, but now you're probably not going to find Cinta on many documents. So under that other information on our personal information page, remember we talked about in the other lesson, that would be a good place to put her name, Cinta, kind of like a nickname under there, so that we know it's the same person. Now at the bottom it tells you where they were buried, which is very helpful if you're trying to look for a tombstone. In most cemeteries, families were buried together and still are today, and so going to a cemetery, finding that information online is helpful to find other relatives as well. Also, there's an informant on here, Robert Basso, probably a grandson. I don't think there was a son named Robert. But anyways, that information is important because I could dig and see, is that person already on the family tree and who he is? Because if he's the one giving the information, then or brought them into the hospital, then that's the person that's probably related to him, and they have the same last name, so pretty sure that's a relative. That is another important information that's not indexed usually, and so if you look on the bottom down here, these are all the things that are indexed. So as you can see, not everything is indexed on these records, so there's a lot more on the original that are important that you can add into the person's personal page, like occupation and especially this informant name. This is really important right here, and it's nowhere on the index record. If there is an image, it is important to take a peek at it and see what other information might be on there. So we're going to close that out. I'm going to close this here. Now let's look at one more place here where it says Tombstone. Now I put this information in. If I click on Joseph Bosso's Tombstone, I actually created that title. You can tell I attached it. My name's on there. I attached that a few years ago. And then you can also tell because over here this icon has the World Wide Web symbol, and that's telling you that I linked this from outside of FamilySearch. I added the URL, and I'm going to show you how to do that. First, I'm going to show you where this link goes to, and then I will show you how to add a source from outside FamilySearch. So you know how to attach. Now let me show you how to add anything that's coming from outside of FamilySearch. So let's click on this URL. Now it's going to warn us that we're going outside of FamilySearch. We're going to hit OK. Okay, now we're on FindAGrave. What we're looking at is Joseph W. Bosso's Tombstone. So somebody added a picture. Now this is all volunteer basis. So you can volunteer to be a photographer, and when somebody is looking for a tombstone in a particular cemetery, they can request a picture to be taken, and then anybody living in that geographical area can take that request, go to the cemetery, take a picture, and then upload it like Carol did. So what we're looking at is a birth, a death, a burial location, and if I clicked on Oak Hill Cemetery, if I clicked on that, I could search that cemetery for any other Bossos. So that is the second thing I'll do. First thing I'll do is make sure this is the right person, and then I will click on the cemetery and search for any other Bossos, because families usually, like I said before, are buried close together within the same cemetery. And so if I found this tombstone and I wanted to attach it to FamilySearch, now a lot of these are already indexed within FamilySearch, and so you can attach it that way. But I probably did this since I did it in 2013 and attached it. It was probably before they started indexing these over into FamilySearch. If there is any records that are outside FamilySearch that aren't through one of the affiliate links like FindAGrave or FamilySearch, so we're going to just copy this URL at the very top, highlight, and then we're going to hit Control-C to copy it. And then we're going to go back into, under sources, we're going to add source. So we're going to click add source, and we're going to just click here under source title, just give it a name, Joseph W. Bosso Tombstone, or whatever you want to. We're going to click web page URL. I'm going to click right here where it says example. I'm going to right click, paste, and then there is the information right there. You can add any information here where the record is found. You could put like, this is the tombstone of Joseph, or whatever. You can put any information you want. You can describe it, put any notes here if you have any information to add to this particular resource. Go ahead and put that there. Reason why you wanted to attach it, and then at the bottom, select the information or events in the source. So we have a birth, we have a name, and we have a death and a burial place. And so if you clicked on those would show up on the personal identification under the vital information. You would see this tag of this resource. Again, you can add this to your source box or not. I'm not going to, and then I can save it. I'm not going to save it because I already put it in there, but I wanted to show you how to do that. So if you did, you would just save that, but I'm going to go ahead and cancel. And when you do, it will be attached right here. You can attach any URLs, any kind of outside sources you can attach by using add source right here. So it not only will save anything from FamilySearch, but anything from anywhere. So that's pretty fantastic. Now, as far as I know, not everything is indexed on FamilySearch from FindAGrave. So I use FindAGrave as a source. If it doesn't pop up in the searching up here, under FamilySearch, I will go ahead and open another window and go to FindAGrave. Let's do that right now so you can see. So I'll open a new window and I will do FindAGrave. The record is not indexed on FamilySearch. If I don't see a tombstone record on an ancestor, I will come look on FindAGrave. Now, guarantee not all tombstones will be on here, but there are millions and millions of records on FindAGrave, and this is an excellent source. My number 2 site I go to outside of FamilySearch. So I would just type in a name. Let's see. Herbert, I'm going to put my great uncle. And so you can type anything. I would stick with generic first name, last name, no middle name in case the tombstone didn't have a middle name, and just hit search. Now if it's a common name like Smith or something else, you may need to add a little bit more information. After you hit search, just browse through the list and see if you can find your matching ancestor. Your homework is going to be to find your own tombstone of one of your ancestors that are already in Family Tree, and then search records and see if you can find any World War registration drafts, and then post to our Facebook group and let us know how it went. We'll see you in our next lesson.